Hey everyone, awesome to have you here. I know Tuesday is not my usual day and not usual time of live stream, but thank you so much for joining. We have an amazing guest today. We have David. We're going to be learning about infrastructure as code, Kubernetes, lots of awesome, exciting things, and there will be lots of green squares for you. I've got like 5 lined up already before we even start. But before we get to that, let me introduce David. So actually, you know what? Let me let David introduce themselves, do a much better job than me. So David, over to you. Please give yourself an intro.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is David, although most people know me as Rockcode from across the internet. I am a developer advocate. For the last year, I have been working with Pulumi, helping people understand and appreciate infrastructure as code, some stuff we'll be taking a look at today. I'm also a content creator and live streamer that focuses on the Kubernetes ecosystem. So I have a channel where if you want to learn Kubernetes, there's a lot more to learn there.
I have just shared David's Twitter link in the chat as well, and links in the description below as well. If you need any more links, let us know and we can share those. And while we're on that subject, David is organizing their first Scotland Kubernetes event called Kube Huddle, and it's going to be in the beginning of October. So hopefully we'll see some of you there.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to a small community-focused Kubernetes event where we can talk to every single person in the room and geek out a little bit. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. It's great. So our plans for today are, well, we're going to be working at EddieHub projects. No surprises there. And you all know that we run, or if you don't know, when we fill you in, we run Kubernetes for the EddieHub projects. And you can see these on DigitalOcean here. And you can also see in the Kubernetes folder in the Linkfree project, the EddieBot project, API project, and various other projects. So that's really good. And so they deploy on the GitHub action via Kubernetes config. But we want more. And one thing I originally thought about this stream was to add a database. We've got a database here, a managed database for by DigitalOcean. But now some projects want MySQL or something like that. I don't want to have to pay $15 per month for a small database. So I thought, right, let's just attach a storage. It's like $5 or $10 a month, and we can have different databases running on our cluster. And so I thought I'd bring in the expert. But then I also thought this morning, so I kind of put a spanner in the works. I kind of put a curveball to David this morning, which was, why don't we just rebuild the whole infrastructure of EddieHub via code? And that way, if I need to rebuild this in the future, move it to a different platform, whatever, if it breaks, I want to scale it up without clicking around the UI, we can do this with code, and you all can contribute to as well. So I'm super excited. That's where we're going to start. So we're going to create a new project. It's going to be EddieHub 2. We're going to do that as code, apparently. So I'm really excited about this. And we're going to replicate, not all of these, just some of these. So probably the cluster first, maybe a load balancer as well. And hopefully we get time to add a database, but it won't be like this. It will be with the attached storage I'm hoping for. So let's see how we get on. We're going to be led by the expert, and we'll see how you go. Leave your questions in the chat as well. This is the repo. Let me share it with you. I only created it this morning, so it's a completely empty repo, and we're going to get started. There we go. So yes, yeah, or Maria or Postgres, exactly. Yeah, we definitely want the options. Hey Avi, how you doing? Hopefully it's not too late for you. We're doing an earlier stream today, so it's not too late for you, which is good. DigitalOcean is epic. Oh, Daniel can't make it to Kube Huddle. Okay, well, what's OSMC in November?
Open Source Monitoring Conference in Nuremberg. It is a fantastic conference that I try and get to every year as well. So yeah, Daniel, I will hopefully see you there.
Awesome. And where is that? Where is that located?
Nuremberg, Germany.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So let's get started. We have VS Code. It's pretty empty. And we should have a live share, I think, connected. Is that working?
It didn't work. So you need to share it again, please.
No problem. Let's try. So I'm sharing it. Let's try again. Let's see how it goes. I might need to close and open my VS Code. That sometimes fixes it. Right. Okay, so that looks a bit better. Let me get you another link. I'll put it in the private chat so no one else sees it. And we are doing a part 2. So we're going to do as much as we can today. And then we are going to do a part 2, I think, next Friday. So we're super excited. Remember, if you have any questions after today, if you think of any more between now and then, we will be answering them next Friday as well. It's early. Okay, great. Hey, Sean, awesome to have you here. Thanks for supporting. Don't forget, everyone, give this video a thumbs up and follow David on Twitter as well. He's got an amazing YouTube channel that focuses on this. Actually, when I was looking through David's YouTube channel, I bookmarked some videos I need to watch this week. One is on like a GitHub Actions replacement, so you can run it locally and anywhere. I can't think what it's called now.
Dagger.
That's what I was going to say. Docker, but clearly it wasn't Docker. But Dagger, yes.
Well, funnily enough, it's by Solomon and team, who are the actual co-founders and creators of Docker, who are now working on Dagger. And they're using Docker technology to provide Dagger. So Dagger uses BuildKit under the hood, which is how all the layering works when you build images. It's super cool. In fact, we replaced all of my automation on the Rockwood Academy with Dagger recently, and it's awesome. Really cool.
Wow, interesting. Okay, that sounds really cool. I have to look in. I'm gonna watch your video, and then I might have some questions afterwards.
No worries.
There's people saying Dagger looks awesome. Oh yes, yeah. People also agree. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's get started because I know we've only got about an hour, I think. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, we've got an hour. If we go a little bit over, it's all right. But based on what we want to do today, I'm really confident we're going to smash that really quickly because infrastructure as code is a superpower once you get the hang of it. So I'm looking forward to sharing this.
Cool.
And we've got our first decision to make, Eddie.
Okay.
What language are we going to use?
Oh, good question. I did see this when I was reading through the docs. Where was it? I think maybe TypeScript because you get all the types. That's quite helpful.
Good choice. I love TypeScript. Okay, can you do me a favor and open a shared terminal on your VS Code?
Terminal. Let's close this. Let's open a README.
All right.
Okay.
And you can give me write permission to that terminal so I can steal all your passwords and credit card numbers.
Perfect. Can you remind me how to do that?
You right click on a terminal from the live share and then say, on the live share menu on the left.
Oh, on the left, sorry.
And then just say make write. There. Right click there.
Okay, got you. Make write. Perfect.
All right. Echo. All right, now we're kicking.
Okay, that wasn't me. That was all David.
All right, so what we want to make sure is we have Pulumi available, which we do. I don't know how to run Pulumi version. How bad is that? There we go.
I have installed it, by the way. Just before.
That's all right. So we're going to start with a template. So we're going to run Pulumi new, and we'll stick this in. How do you like to structure your projects? I don't want to be too dogmatic here with my approach, but do you want all of this infrastructure in its own folder, or do you want it on the root of the infrastructure?
I think for this. I usually put things, I suppose, in source. So I'd like to put it in a folder, I suppose. Maybe, do you call it infrastructure? Could we call it source, SRC?
Well, if we stick it here, we'll get a source directory anyway when we do the Typescript. Now, we don't need to log in for today. What I'm going to do is log in local. So when you log in, it just means you've got the Pulumi SaaS, and that means that all of your state file from Pulumi will be stored in our cloud, and it's completely free for individual developers. So that is a really good way to go. But I don't want you to have to flash any tokens on the live stream. So we'll start with local, and we can push it to the Pulumi SaaS later. For now, we'll do .enforced, just because there's some stuff already in this directory. Oh, it's not template name. And then this gives us a list of templates. So it's like, hey, what do you actually want to do with Pulumi? And where do you want to start? So we're going to try and start with DigitalOcean, which means go to additional, and we'll select DigitalOcean TypeScript.
Nice.
We give it a name. We'll call this, nice description, EddieHub Community Infrastructure. Is my keyboard too loud? Do you want me to switch to my Apple one, or are we...
No, it's okay. I think people don't mind. I can pretend I'm typing as well, so that's okay. I can be like, like this. Some people have said it's a bit small. I've made it bigger. Hopefully it's bigger. Great to see Sayam here. Sayam, hope you're wearing that GitHub t-shirt that I sent you. And great to see Daniel and lots of awesome people here. So thank you so much all for joining.
All right, now we just have to wait for NPM, which can be fast or slow depending on the day and the weather. So hopefully not too long.
And my connection. So connection's not too great today. I don't think I'm too bad. Let me switch back to over here and look at the folder structure. All
right, so I'm going to move this index into source because you mentioned that you like that setup, and which is good because I love that setup myself. Now,
I love keeping things vanilla, like standard and so forth. So,
well, I come from the Kubernetes ecosystem where Go programmers just do not care. It's like just throw it all on the root, and it's just there's main.go, root.go, commands.go. It's just all this Go, and I'm like, hey, let's take this away. But when we move that into a source folder, we need to modify one more thing. So we need to give Pulumi a little bit of a hint So we can open this pulumi.yaml. Can you follow me, please? Go back to the live
sure.
share menu and then right.
Oh, sorry. Have I stopped following you? Yeah, my mistake. Because I clicked on follow. I clicked on the README. Here we go.
Nice.
My mistake.
So we just have to say that main lives inside source. That's where we're keeping our Pulumi program. That's all we need to do.
Perfect.
Now, if we pop open the code that it's generated, we'll see that we have a DigitalOcean domain which we could manage. So we could actually start with I seen you had EddieHub.io on your
That's
deal.
correct. Yep.
All right. I mean, we could import that right away and see a really cool feature from Pulumi. So I'm going to delete that code.
Okay.
No, I've never done this before because I never used DigitalOcean. So here's the fun part. Pulumi import -- help. Now this command allows us to provide a type, which will be a DigitalOcean domain, and a name of the remote resource that we want to import. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say digital. In fact, do you want to pull up the docs? Like, if I don't know the answer to this, I'll show people how to find it because.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, let me make it a bit bigger. Here we go.
Yeah. So just search for DigitalOcean at the top. Yep, and that first one, I think, is
the example or the.
no, go to the third one, registry setup.
Okay.
Because then we can go to API docs. So this shows you how to configure this thing. We'll do that in a wee minute. And the API docs, search for domain, because that's the resource we want to import.
Got you.
I click on that, and if we scroll to the bottom of this page, it'll show us the import command.
Oops.
There we go.
So we can import the configuration. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we can just do that's DigitalOcean index.
Oh,
domain.
let me switch back to here. Oh, sorry. We go.
All right, so that's the type, which is a little bit verbose. We are working on making that shorter, so you can just do like DigitalOcean :domain. And in fact, our YAML support does support that already. We're bringing it to other languages. Okay, so next, if we go back to the import command example.
Yep.
And it says, okay, we need my domain and then the actual domain itself. So we're going to give it an ID, and we'll call this EddieHub.io, and we want to import EddieHub.io. Now this is going to fail. We haven't actually configured any authentication or authorization to DigitalOcean yet. So it knows we want to import something, but it actually did work. Okay, I guess it doesn't reach out to DigitalOcean to confirm that domain exists, which is quite nice. So
okay, cool.
So I'm going to copy and paste all of this and put this in. Oh, you must have we exported the token beforehand.
Yes, I did. I didn't want to show the token on the stream, so.
Yeah. Yes, we already have a DigitalOcean token available in our environment, which is why this worked and why this import is already good. From here, what I'm really hoping now is that if we run Pulumi up and do a --diff, it'll tell us there's no changes to make and that this domain is now managed by our Pulumi program.
Okay. Just checking, it's not going to make any changes to the existing domain, though.
No, look, unchanged. Okay. So we imported it. That's it. So we've now brought your domain under management. Okay. It's also protected. So you cannot delete this from the Pulumi program while this line of code is here, which is also good.
Got you. And just to answer a question, here we go. Are we setting a droplet up to a droplet? We will. I think everything in DigitalOcean runs in the droplet, so we'll be setting up a Kubernetes cluster, the managed Kubernetes cluster, and that will be a droplet effectively under the hood, but it's labeled slightly differently, is my understanding. We'll be doing a load balancer as well, probably, which again will be a droplet. I think everything ends up being a droplet on there, but there is some magic that happens in DigitalOcean behind the scenes. Yes, it took the credentials from, good point. I think you probably wrote this before we did it, but before we said it, it took credentials from I exported in the terminal. Actually, having said that, I exported it in a different terminal. So it shouldn't be in that terminal, just thinking about it. So something might fail further down, or unless I've got something configured from a while ago and I've completely forgotten.
I'm going to go that you have something that you maybe have. Well, no, because we regen the entire token. I think it is available in this session. What's probably happened is you exported it in iTerm, opened VS Code, and it's probably propagated
I did. Yes, that's what I did. I did open it from the same terminal. You're right. Okay, good point.
So, yeah, everything appears to be working. So we showed you import. That's quite nice. I'm going to try and show you something else a bit more magical now. So you said you wanted a Kubernetes cluster, right?
Yeah, I like magic, so magic's good.
So this is my favorite thing about. Oh, you can't see it because. All right, you do some typing for me. Do a dot and let the autocomplete.
Oh, it's the autocomplete, right? Okay, dot, yeah.
And then Kubernetes. Look, we can get a new cluster. So you can just hit return on that and then open parentheses. And then we get type hints all the way through. So we give it a name and we have some args. So
okay, let me move my mic because I can't see. There we go. So name. So cluster should be. What should we call it? It's a good question.
You could just call it EddieHub, or
okay.
production, or whatever you want.
Yeah, maybe production because it'd be under the EddieHub project. Is that how it would work?
It will be, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe just I don't know, production, and then I can always have a dev one as well and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting.
And then we open our curly braces because we have some type of arg. And if you just pull up the autocomplete on that, it'll walk you through everything that we need there too.
Okay, London. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was Copilot. Was that correct, by the way?
Yeah, it's pretty close. But if you do option escape, I think it is.
Option escape. Okay, never done that. Oh, I didn't know that.
So now you can see we can set versions, auto upgrades, we can set node pools, we can give it a name, we give it tags. We can walk through the whole process. I won't make you type anymore. I'm happy to take over.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just the conscious of time, that's all.
Yeah. So I'm going to make one more change here.
Okay.
And we're going to call this cluster name. And because we want this to be idempotent.
Yes, please. People who don't know what oh, go on. No, you go ahead, David.
Well, yeah, I was going to explain what idempotent means because we want to be able to run this program, and obviously it's declarative and it does the same thing every single time when it inputs and the outputs. One of our inputs here is the stack, right? We created a Pulumi stack at the start. And in fact, on the file tree, you'll see pulumi.production.yaml because that is our production stack. Yeah, just you can do an ls or you can look on the left tree. You can see that production file, right? Or up from the bottom.
Production file.
2 down, yeah. Up.
Oh,
there.
Oh, the one above it. Yes, sorry. Pulumi production. Yes, sorry.
So this is called a stack. And what we want is that when we modify or create a new stack, say we do Pulumi stack init dev. And we'll put the password in again, which I haven't even told you, but that's all right. We now have a stack called dev, but this code will not run because what's going to happen is we have 2 clusters called production, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. So instead,
we're not following you. Sorry, one sec. Go on.
So what we don't want to do is hard code production in this code because the stack will change and the same code runs it. So we're actually just going to pull that stack out of the Pulumi reference here and use that as our cluster name. All right, now we've got a red squiggle, which means we haven't defined everything that we need. So we can pop open, I'll pop open the autocomplete, but we need some sort of node pool, which we don't know what that is yet. Nope. We need a version. I don't know what that is yet.
Nope.
And everything else in that list is optional. Cool.
Okay.
Now, I can autocomplete the node pool. You can't see that, but if you want to do an option escape for people.
Oh, but help
inside node pool. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll just see that a node pool needs a name, a size, a node count, and a few other bits and pieces. So I don't know. I've never spun up a DigitalOcean Kubernetes cluster, so I'm winging this as much as everyone else.
It's part of the fun.
So we'll just call this pool 1. We'll probably change that name. I just want to get all the required fields in. A size, I have no idea what that means yet. Actual node count, we'll assume 1. How large are your clusters?
As small as possible. I can show you. If I bring this up here, if we go to the cluster, it will be the smallest and cheapest one possible because we still don't even use a fraction of it. So it is only has one node, and it costs me $12 a month. We run loads of apps on it. It doesn't do very much. Let me see. Oh, here we go. So it's 1 CPU, 2 gigs of memory, and 50 gigs of disk space.
Nice. Does it have the size listed here?
Oh, the actual name.
Yeah. Let me copy and paste that.
Resize or auto scale.
Well, we can go to the Pulumi docs. They'll probably have an example for us if we don't see it here.
In settings, let me just check. No, I don't think it does. You're right. It would make sense if it did.
You would Yeah, I would have thought so.
View resource details. No, it didn't help.
Click on the pool there.
This one?
Yeah, the plus, or yeah. Is that a plus thing at the start of that?
Oh, yes, I didn't see that.
And then is that a node? Yep. So yeah, it doesn't give us any more information, does it?
No, not very useful.
All right.
Okay.
So let's just go to the docs, yeah, and go to Kubernetes cluster.
Okay. Here we go. Docs are always the best, always a good place to go.
Yep, and then just click on the cluster args or scroll down. Yeah. And then if we go to node pool.
Where is it? No.
Up a little bit.
Here we go.
Click on that. Yep, click on that object. And size. Yep, that doesn't help us either.
We can go into DigitalOcean itself.
Yes, let's do that.
Would that work? DigitalOcean, and then maybe their. Would they show drop? Is it a droplet we were looking for, or Kubernetes? Is it for this?
I would imagine it's just the droplet size. So if you go back to the console and just spin up a new droplet, we maybe get some size.
Yeah, that might be easier. What to go to here and actually create a new one, but don't actually create it, but like create custom.
Yeah.
And see what options it gives us. That's a good idea. So we chose London for that, so that's all good. And then where's size? Here we go. Node plan. I went for this one. It doesn't say. It still doesn't say.
I bet you if you right click on that, and
yes, I was thinking the exact same thing. What have we got? It's a div, and then we've got an SVG. Thanks. It should be a drop down. It's a select, right? But they haven't done it as that. They've done it as something fancy.
Too much JavaScript everywhere.
Yeah, it's not going to be an SVG, so that's not so good. It's got a class there, but I don't know what that refers to.
Let's just pull up.
Okay, no, it's got 3 nodes. We would do it to 1. It goes up to $12 a month if anyone's interested. Okay. Where's the code back? The size, we are not sure.
I'm going to find one from our examples repository.
If anyone has it, let's know.
What I always do is we have a repository, github.com/pulumi/examples. Whenever I don't know how to do anything, I go to the examples and I see what we have there.
Got you. Well, let me go there. So Pulumi, and then you said
github.com/pulumi/examples.
Sorry, did you say /examples?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
There's a great place. You can just search for DigitalOcean. There's a TypeScript Kubernetes example, which actually reveals some pretty cool stuff to remove static strings from our code. So we can take a look at that.
TypeScript K8.
And then pop open the index. And what this shows us is that we don't need any hard-coded strings because we've type-defined everything. So we actually have types for the droplet slugs and we have types for the region. So we can clean up.
Oh, perfect. Nice.
What I'm going to do is, if you go back to our VS Code, we have this region and we can do London 1, so no string. On the size, we can do DigitalOcean. What was it? Put my example back up. Droplet slug. And then we can pick a size here. So we'll pick something small.
Can I do it? Is it auto-completing for you? Can I?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's just have a look to see how it looks. Okay, got you. So you got 1 gig, 2 gig. It does come up with all of the different ones, which is awesome. Oh, there's loads. Okay, perfect. Sorry, carry on. And we had actually a really good question as well. Is there a VS Code extension for Pulumi?
You don't need one. It just works against your language extension. So I'm just using the standard TypeScript and JavaScript extension. Nothing Pulumi specific about what I'm doing today.
Okay, cool.
All right. Now I pasted in the version from the example that we just looked at. This pulls the versions that are supported. Do you see my copy? Cool, you do.
Yeah.
From our provider. And then that returns a promise with all the versions. So I'm just using then and then pulling out the latest version. So what we have here is code that should and will confidently say provision a DigitalOcean Kubernetes cluster.
I have a question about the then. So this will this work in that it will wait for this to complete? You don't need to put an await in it.
You don't have to put in await. Pulumi will handle all promises within the dependency graph.
Okay, cool.
So we can run a Pulumi preview this time. And that will tell us that it wants to create a cluster. Oh, I'm on the wrong stack. Let me switch stack because I created the dev one.
Ah, got you.
So we're on a preview. See, that's going to recreate the domain, which we don't want. So what we should see is the domain is fine, but we need a cluster. Perfect. So it's then, hey, we have a new resource to create a Kubernetes cluster. Do you want to go ahead and do that? So are you happy for me to spin up a cluster with this configuration, or do you want to change anything?
No, I think that's good. As long as it doesn't affect our existing one, then that's all good.
All right, let's do that. Pulling me up.
So that looks good. And I can do it side by side maybe. So, oh, that's going to be too small. I can minimize that.
So we don't need to look at the code anymore, really. So feel free just to jump to the browser. All I'm going to do is push the yes once you're showing the thing. So.
Okay. So we have one. It's created a year ago. So we're expecting a newer one to appear. What does everyone think? People are liking Pulumi.
Oh, well, we got an update failed and our droplet size is invalid, so that's not a great start.
I'm guessing if a Kubernetes, it won't allow 1 gig. I think it must be 2 minimum.
Right, let's pop it up to 2 and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, we will steal another droplet size from the example.
Yeah, Kubernetes might have a specific...
I know Stevo Cloud has specific Kubernetes sizes rather than their standard instance sizes. Yeah, okay. Let's
pick. You can make it as big as you want. It's fine. We can always bring it down afterwards.
I'm just making sure there's no Kubernetes specific stuff that maybe we should be picking from. So I'm scrolling through the autocomplete. It doesn't appear to be. So I'm gonna let's throw a 4 gig at it, and if that doesn't work, we'll look at the Kubernetes options. Foiled by a size. Right, okay, let's see.
I think it might have specific sizes.
So the example from the Pulumi repository we looked at uses the S2 vCPU tree. So let's SB2, and I'll throw that 2 gig at it.
Okay, I wonder what the S2 means.
I mean, I have no idea. I'm waiting this.
Yeah, I wonder if I click on it, can I get more information? Oh, it's the S. Okay, it's what they call it. 2 gigs. Yeah, I wonder. See if it looks better. See if it appears.
Well, it's taking longer, which is good.
That's true.
So maybe refresh. I don't know if DigitalOcean does real-time updates on that page.
I'll have to refresh it in a moment. Let's see. So let's have a look. I'll take a look at the chat. Let me bring some. There we go. Hey. Another one. Nice. And it's a much nicer name, which is great. Maybe we should call it K8 production, but that's good. It's all fine. Let's have a look. I can't pronounce this person's name very well, so that's why I always get scared about saying it. Is it Lofwa? Is that how you pronounce it? Please tell me in the chat if I'm like 50% right, 80% right. But great success GIF. AWS. I stopped using AWS a long time ago. I just felt too painful. DigitalOcean just seems to work, and I'm getting surprise bills as well. So that's running. Okay, it's creating it. So that looks really good. So in the end, for the config we had, that was for the domain. And must everyone always have this to get started?
No, I just did that to show you the import command.
Got you.
I don't know what your domain configuration is. I don't know what it's doing in the DigitalOcean context. Wherever that is, we could extend it, modify it. I don't know if it's doing DNS.
It is doing DNS, yeah.
So we could start to import your DNS records, or we could just leave it as is. So you could I do all my DNS as code as well, actually.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to do it, because if I had to recreate it, I'll be like, don't remember how to do it. So it's best to do it as code. I can see it written there. Makes so much sense. This is why I wanted to rejig what we had planned for today, because I think, you know what, I don't want to build on top of a kind of a shaky foundation. I wanted to have something that if I needed to recreate this, I could just run a command, recreate it. So this is epic.
Let me share a link with you while we wait.
Okay. Close enough, thanks. We'll get on a call and you'll have to teach me.
I shared you a link in the private chat, but it's just my DNS configuration with Pulumi, which.
And I can open it right? Use GitHub, yes.
Yeah, it's all public.
Let me grab that. Copy. Here we go. And then the level of problem solving, critical thinking is amazing. Thank you. I'm always learning and improving on this. It just, always needs improving. Oh, this is awesome. So, okay, so you've got literally all, because if I lost all my DNS records or whatever, I just wouldn't know what to do. And I love it how it's all just here. And if someone wants to make a change from the community, they go, oh, actually, Eddie, we need another subdomain. You know, they can just kind of create a subdomain or whatever is needed, which is pretty awesome. I'm guessing we could have Pulumi run on a GitHub action in the future. Whereas if someone made a change and I approved it and it merged, it could just add the DNS records. It's not me. So at the moment, it's me doing everything in the infrastructure side manually, which is just seems wrong to do it manually, and just seems wrong that I'm always the bottleneck or gatekeeper, however you want to call it. But I definitely am bottleneck. So this is awesome.
Yeah, I'll share one more thing just while we wait. I'm a big fan of URL shorteners. I know you use them a lot as well, but I handle all of that with a Cloudflare worker and Pulumi too. And it's all infrastructure as code. So you could do the same where your community can say, hey, can we get a new short link to this thing? And they could send you a pull request, which would be pretty nice.
That would be so cool. Let's have a look.
So it's just if you want to add something to the rockcode.link, and I have rockcode.community, people just can open a pull request and say, here, short bit, long bit, done.
That's very cool. That is, really, really awesome. Love that. Yeah, but CI can do all the checks as well. Like, definitely important. Wrangler 2 is that? What's Wrangler? I don't use it.
Wrangler is the Cloudflare tool for deploying to pages and workers, which is what that URL shortener is. So that is actually a Cloudflare worker with a custom domain on it. So it's deployed to 250 locations around the world. So it responds like super fast. And because all my links are static inside of code, like there's no database lookups, there's no messiness. It just works. Which is
nice. Okay, look, that progress bar jumped up quite fast. So that looks like it's in real time. So that's good.
Yeah, spinning Kubernetes clusters up can be a little bit slow. We're almost there.
While it's going, do you want to do any of the next parts in the code?
Right. So what do you want to do next? Do you want to deploy something to the cluster? Do you want to?
We could deploy something to the cluster. I think it'd be good to see something working. My question is, if it hasn't got a domain, how can we have access to it? Can we set up like a temporary something?
Yeah, so I'm assuming DigitalOcean clusters get this, because for managed Kubernetes, this is pretty standard. But you'll probably find that there's an ingress IP associated with the cluster, which we can just hit.
Yes.
So we could deploy Nginx to the cluster, and it should just be exposed. Now, I'm going to sign myself up for some extra work maybe here, but if we deploy Nginx with a load balancer service, DigitalOcean should automatically deploy and manage that load balancer for us without me having to do anything.
Okay.
So we're going to make that work.
That completed. Okay, so you're going to do another droplet, which will be for the ingress for the load balancer. Is that correct?
No droplets needed. Nothing at all. Right. So what we're going to do is say, hey, let's deploy Nginx. And now we need a new thing, right? Because this is DigitalOcean so far. We haven't actually added the Kubernetes Sdk. So we open package.json. Can you follow me again, please?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We lost. Where's the follow? I lost it. To-dos, no. Docker, no. Remote, no. Where's it gone? It's off the page, isn't it? Live share. There we go. Had to hide the one I wanted. Follow. There we go. Okay, here we go.
All right, so I'm just dropping in Pulumi Kubernetes into our package.json, and I'm going to run, do you use npm or yarn? What's your preference?
npm.
All right, and we'll run npm install. And I'll just take a moment. We can already save that, jump over to our index file, where we're going to pull in the Kubernetes SDK. So import star as Kubernetes. from Pulumi Kubernetes. Now we can uncomment this, and what we actually want to say is we want a new Kubernetes. And again, I'm just auto-completing through this, but we want apps v1 deployment, and we'll call this Nginx. Do you want to show the autocomplete just on the...
Yes. Okay. I remember it's Option Escape. Oh, it won't be in the right window. That would help. There we go.
So we can see, like, whether you know Kubernetes or not, you can see that we have to provide a spec, some metadata, API versions, kinds. A lot of this could be inferred by Pulumi itself, so we don't need to provide everything. So what I'm going to do is, because I know this quite well, is jump into metadata, call this Nginx. I'm not going to specify a namespace. We'll deploy to the default namespace. And now we have a spec. You want to pop open the autocomplete one more time on spec, please?
Yep.
So I actually do know Kubernetes deployment objects probably from start to finish, but we don't need to, right? The autocomplete is here to guide us. So we need a template, which needs a spec, which needs containers. Container needs an image of Nginx. Okay, let's see. We need to give this a name. Typing too hastily here. So we got containers. Label selectors. Okay, so we need to add labels, app, Nginx, and then for this to resolve and be managed properly, we need the selector, which is match labels. There we go. App, Nginx, comma, and that is a valid Kubernetes deployment. Now, the problem is, not really a problem, but where is this deploying to?
That's what I was going to ask you. Where's it going?
Well, it's going to use your kubeconfig that is configured in the environment, but we can change that behavior. So we can pop up here and say that we want a Kubernetes provider, which is a Kubernetes provider. We'll call this DigitalOcean. And that needs a kube config, blah, blah, blah. Now, sometimes the Pulumi providers already make this available to us. So we can take a look at our Kubernetes cluster, kube configs. I've never seen that plural before, so I'm going to see what the hell that is. This is an output of multiple kube configs. I have no idea why, so I am just going to grab the first one and see what happens. We're getting an error because of reasons. All right, let's take a look at our Kubernetes cluster. I'm just looking at the docs inside of VS Code. Yeah. Oh, it's not following the docs. Oh, that's annoying.
While you're reading that, I'm going to just give you another shout out as well. So Kubernetes cluster is still, it's finished building. Perfect. And just to give a shout out to David, I'm going to drop the chat. Drop your Twitter in the chat, I should say. Give David a follow if you're not. And they've got a YouTube channel as well. I've queued up lots of videos to watch. Also, check out Kube Huddle if you want to come to meet David at an event in Edinburgh in the UK. Then I will share that in the chat. The links are in the description below, but I'm just sharing them for convenience. And to give everyone an update who's joined. Hey, Carl, how you doing? Awesome to have you here. So Carl writes a lot of our EddieHub projects, the API, the live map, all the rest. Actually, I should give away some green squares, actually. We do have some green squares to give away, people. So let me just read them out. So write in the chat if you need some green squares for today, some open source green squares. What we need, if I bring this over onto this window, this is what we need for some green squares. Okay. So what we need is, I made in our support repo, which is probably in the wrong place, because now we do have, where is it? Oh, wrong tab. Where is it? We do have an infrastructure repo where we're going to build the entire infrastructure of EddieHub as code, and we'll push to this at the end of the stream. But if someone can raise an issue for each one of these items, and I'll share this link, but we've got build cluster by code, not clicks, Pulumi or Terraform, so it will be Pulumi. And then if you could raise an issue for each of these, we will want centralized logging. That's a real pain we have at the moment. Persistent storage, we're not doing them all today, but if you could raise them on the infrastructure repo, that will be super, super helpful. So I can share each of these actually in the chat as well. Actually, you know what? I'll share the link to the issue, and you all can, and then we can close this. Once there's an issue raised for each of these, we can close this issue because they'll be in the right place. So I will share that in the chat. Here we go. The entire DevOps stuff is a book with 7 seals for me. Yeah, I'm learning all the time. So but this is good, right? I think we can all learn together. David, how you getting on?
Yep, I pasted. Oh, lost my voice. I pasted in some code that I took exactly from the Pulumi example that we looked at earlier. Now, the reason we needed this extra bit of code is because DigitalOcean does certificate rotation on the control plane nodes. So if you look at this code, which I highlight now, what we're saying is if the cluster is running, we're going to refetch the cluster and pull out the kubeconfig. Otherwise, we just use the kubeconfig that Pulumi has in its state file. And this is just because DigitalOcean rotate it in the background. We could get around that by running Pulumi refresh every time to pull down the latest config. But this bit of code is safe for us to use right now. We then create a new Kubernetes provider, just passing in that kubeconfig. And lastly, we add a we add a resource option to our Nginx deployment. And we say that we want to use our Kubernetes provider and not whatever is available on the host, like so.
Okay.
So we can run a Pulumi preview on our CLI. And it should just say the only thing we want to do is create the provider and the Nginx deploy.
Just so I can understand this correctly, is this going to go to the same like droplet, or is it going to? You're saying it's not going to create a new one? Because I think at the moment, when I do it by installing via clicks, it does it as a separate droplet, which is great if it does it on a single one, because that saves you money. Because if I go to load balancers, it does appear as a separate droplet.
We're going to find out how. So this all comes down to what Kubernetes calls the CNI, so it's the Container Networking Interface. Plus, DigitalOcean provides something called a cluster provider that runs inside of the cluster. So when you add certain types of resources, like persistent volume claims, load balancer services, etc., it goes to the cloud and does things.
I see. So
it may create a new load balancer on its own droplet. I'm not entirely sure at this moment, but we're going to find out.
We'll find out. I have a feeling it will, which is fine.
All right, I'm happy with that preview. It looks like I expect the new provider, the new deployment. So we're going to do a Pulumi up, and we're just going to tell it to go ahead. And hopefully we have something running inside of our Kubernetes cluster. Now I'm going to make one more change here. Okay, so my spec is a little bit wrong. My selector did not match the label. Oh yeah, I did the deployment labels, and I forgot the labels down here, or in here. Nope. Too many spec templates. Okay, so we got our selector and then our template, which should have metadata. I was almost there. Labels. Okay. So this comes down to Kubernetes. When you create a deployment, deployments don't do anything. There's a controller that then creates replica sets every time the deployment changes. And the way that those are annotated together is via the label selectors. So you have to make sure the labels exist at the different levels of the tree, and then the replica set controller doesn't really do anything. There's a pod controller that creates the pods for the replica set. It's all very confusing. And I've shared far too much knowledge, but we have to make sure those labels are in the correct place, which is why that failed. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to export something so that we can run kube control locally. Do we have kube control?
Yeah, we do. I will have to do an export though.
It's okay. You don't have to do anything.
Okay.
It's all good. So what we're going to say is that we need a const called kubeconfig, which is equal to our kubeconfig. Like so. What have I got wrong with my export? Oh no, because that's already exists. Let's call it KC for just now. Or in fact, I could just export kubeconfig. I'm just being a bit silly, right? No.
Carl, I'm looking at you. Wait a second.
No, it's up here.
Okay.
Okay, so now when we run Pulumi up, we don't want to flash this.
We don't know what, sorry?
Flash the kubeconfig to the audience. So there's a suppress out.
Can you do it quiet or something?
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be.
Suppress outputs.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to run this. So this is now going to hopefully deploy our Nginx deployment, but it's also going to give us a variable that we can consume locally to speak to the Kubernetes cluster.
Got you. Yes, Carl, that's a good question. Pulumi is like Terraform, but with TypeScript. So you get the type hinting and all that great stuff.
Hey, look at that.
It worked. Okay, let me refresh this page. I'm quite keen to see how it reflects in DigitalOcean.
Well, we haven't added a service yet to our...
Okay.
So we could do that first, but we can also run Pulumi. What's this going to show? I'm not sure. I'll clear it quick. Oh, we've only got a partial kubeconfig. It's okay. That's not enough for people to do anything nefarious. So you can see here that we have something exported from this cluster that allows us to speak to it. So in theory, I can do kubeconfig. Am I okay to export? Do you have something called kubeconfig?
Yeah, I do, but I could do it every time I need it, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, do what you need.
Pulumi stack output kubeconfig. Oh yeah, it's trying to do an interactive for the stack password.
Can we take it off screen for the moment?
Yeah, do you want to just put something over the terminal for 2 seconds?
Yeah, or I can minimize the terminal, I think. Can't I?
Yeah. Do that.
Is it J? Yeah, it's J. There we go. So what are you all thinking? What do you think? We can rebuild the whole EddieHub cluster and load balancers and SSLs. It's SSL, so I did add it. So who's created some green squares? But I did add SSL to that. We will need, this probably should come second, but we will need SSL added to our load balancer to make sure we don't lose the HTTPS. I think once we've got this, then we can move things over. And I think the great thing about using something like Pulumi is not all the obvious benefits that we spoke about. Is if I'm not working on it for a couple of weeks and we're not running any apps actually on it, I move things over, I could just tear it down and save some money and then just, rebuild all up when I get back to work on it. Obviously, once it's finished and being used and I've removed, because I do have EddieHub and I was going to create an EddieHub 2 and start moving things over. Because all the services on DigitalOcean are great, but they come at a cost, especially if you want different databases. I want to pay £15 per type of database, Postgres, MySQL, Mongo, and so forth. $15, I mean. So yeah, if we get our own attached storage and run our own databases in the Kubernetes cluster, then we get the best of it. So that's the plan. But don't forget, if anyone's joined and they want some green squares, we need an item for each one of these. Initiate each one of these on the infrastructure project.
All right, we're good.
Okay, awesome. Let's bring that back up.
So I'm now running kubecontrol locally. I had to just write the output from Pulumi to a file called KC, so don't open that file.
Okay.
But you can see now that we can query and we can see our Nginx deployment was created 2 minutes ago. So now we want to make this available to the world. So,
okay, should I see that now in DigitalOcean? If it's created, it looks like it's running.
I don't think it gives you access into any of the Kubernetes stuff, right?
It's interesting, no, because with it doesn't look like it does, but it's yeah.
Well, we haven't exposed the service yet, so let's do that first,
let's have a look.
We'll see what it does.
Okay, cool. I'm interested. I'm excited.
But we can run get pods, all namespaces, and we'll see. We've got our CSI provider for volumes. We've got our node agent. We've got a few things. Oh, we don't have access to the control plane node, so we're not going to see the integration point, the cloud controller manager. So we'll just keep going. But let's do Nginx service, which is a new Kubernetes core v1 service. Call this Nginx, and this needs some variables, so we're going to spec this out. We need selector app Nginx ports port 80. That should be enough. Now this will create a cluster IP service, and I'm going to do that first, and then we'll update it so you can see how Pulumi manages changes as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to run a Pulumi up, and I'm going to do a skip preview and a dash dash yes. So it's not going to show me what it's going to do. It's not going to ask me for permission. It's just going to go ahead and create that. Oh, I've not added the provider. It's going to fail.
So it's kind of like yes is like the force, like just do it.
Yeah, that'll just do it. So we'll see our update fail because it's going to try and speak to a local Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
I think it just spoke to your other cluster. But I'll now remove that with the provider. So it's as if it never happened. Let's create our new service.
And how does it know which cluster to speak to? It does it via the name of it, right?
It does it by this provider that we're passing in.
Okay.
So we created a provider up here with the kube config from DigitalOcean, so that it speaks to that cluster.
Got you.
Now, I'm going to make, if we run kube control get services, we'll see our Nginx service, and it's a cluster IP service. So that's not going to be available externally. Now we want to change that. So we can say type load balancer, like so. And now we can run I can't type limit up -def, and we'll see that it's going to change that type, and it should hopefully. I'm pretty 86% confident that DigitalOcean is going to make that work for us.
Okay, cool. People in the chat saying they want to learn this stuff, but there's so much development stuff to learn as well. You're right; it's really hard. There's just so much going on in tech, and I feel like I'm scratching the surface in it as well. Oh, so a new load balancer has been created. Okay. So we can see it coming up now. Okay, so it will do it as a separate droplet, which is interesting, which is what I thought it would do. I thought it would do that.
I mean, we could change that behavior. We could certainly not rely on load balancer services. We could use cluster IP services and deploy our own ingress to the cluster. So it's quite common for people to run Nginx ingress or Traffic or Caddy or Envoy, Ambassador, all these other ingress controllers in their own cluster, so they don't pay load balancer fees with the cloud providers. So that is one option that we could go down if we wanted.
Okay, and is obviously the downside is it's at risk if anything happens to that one droplet, then the thing goes down. But we're only going to have if you're running a cluster of Kubernetes, like if you're running multiple nodes, then I guess external load balancer is probably the better option. But as we're only running one node, it makes no difference really, because if it goes down,
well, the default configuration is going to be every time we create a service of type load balancer, it's going to create a new DigitalOcean load balancer. So if you want to expose 5 things from your cluster, you'd be paying for 5 load balancers.
Wow. Okay. You definitely don't want to do that.
So what you do to avoid that is provision an ingress controller with a load balancer and route everything through it and distribute it within the cluster. It's a really good way of doing it, and that's an improvement we can make on part 2, part 3, whatever you need to do here. Or I could just do it async for you, but. What we're seeing now is Pulumi is using its knowledge of these providers in Kubernetes to actually not finish until everything that we want to be running is healthy. So this is something that Pulumi is really good at. Like when you do a deployment to Kubernetes, it checks that the pods exist, that the pods are healthy, the label annotations are all correct. It just kind of sits there, waits, and does its checks, and then says that I'm done. So you're not in a position where you apply stuff that doesn't work, and then you have to go and update it and fix it manually. So Pulumi is always trying to make sure things are the way you expect.
Got you. And load balancers just noticed come up.
Yep, so Pulumi, once it sees the IP address for that inside of the Kubernetes system, will drop out. We should be able to curl Nginx, and we'll have a working setup in under an hour, no less.
Yeah, finished early, which is great. But I think definitely we need to do it. So we don't. I think I made that mistake when I first set it up. I remember going to bed late, and I was working with a few people from EddieHub, and we were creating a load balancer for every single pod we deployed. And then I woke up in the morning, I got a bill like $50, and I'm like, what? And then I look, and I've got like 20 load balancers I created, and I deleted the deployment, but I left the load balancer. I had all these orphan load balancers, and they're still being charged for it. So yeah, now we have one that routes it through, and then Ingress manages it. But
look at that. I curled Nginx.
Perfect. So, okay, so that works.
It does.
With only like 10 lines of, well, most of them are brackets really, but yeah, not many lines of code, which is great. What does everyone think? Does everyone think you're going to get into infrastructure as code? I think it's definitely better than clicking and pointing, because my concern is if I needed to create a new Kubernetes cluster, say, I want to move everything over for whatever reason, I have to remember where I clicked, what I set up, the naming of all these things, and that's quite high risk, and it would probably take me days to redo it and remember. But whereas, because I had to do SSL and I have no idea how I got that to work, so I just followed something online and it kind of worked. Well, it didn't work the first time, it worked like the 10th time. So if you can do it via code, then you know it's repeatable, which I think is just, yeah. And if you get an error, you get a clear error of why it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, our next step here would be to enable TLS on Nginx. So we'd have to deploy a cert manager, configure a certificate. We could do all of that with Typescript, which is very nice.
That's amazing. Awesome.
So do you want me to shut all this down with a preliminary destroy? Do you want to add something else before we finish?
Depending on your time. I'm good for time. So if you think you can add one more thing to this today, then great. If not, then we'll destroy it and we can bring it up next time. It's entirely up to you. How's your time?
I'm feeling brave. What's next on your list?
Okay, so I think one thing we probably should do is don't have a load balancer per item. Probably like a safe option to do that next. Although I am really excited to have, SSL and logging and other things, but we'll get to those another time. Let's do the important things first.
All right, let's deploy an Nginx controller. Now, do you have a preference, or are we going with my preference?
I just use the default that DigitalOcean gave me, so I do not have a preference. What are the options?
Oh, there's a couple of major ones. I'd say the most popular ones these days are Contour, Ambassador, or the Nginx one itself.
Okay.
I like a Contour. I also like Ambassador. So,
okay. Well, let's see what people think in the chat while they're having a think. Let's just answer some of these questions if that's okay. Are you going to use an application to load balance? So no, we'll have a dedicated load balancer, but one, and then that will pass it through. And if I understand that correctly. And then what else have we got? A bunch of wizards. Thanks. Okay, question from Carl. What's the best way to centralize logging? Yes, this is an important one that poor Carl struggles with, because Carl doesn't have access to our cluster and is doing a lot of work on a lot of our apps and doesn't have access to the logs. So we want to centralize logging. And then I have another question to add to this. So centralized logging, definitely need it. I could agree with this, Carl, absolutely. I also came across recently teleports, which looks like I can give access to different people, read only and write for different things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do a lot of content on teleport. It's one of my favorite. In fact, I have an entire course on my YouTube for teleport. So 10 hours of content.
Wow. Okay.
It's my favorite piece of open source software. I just love the flexibility and power that it gives.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, that's something I need to learn as well. That's interesting. So Carl, we're going to get centralized logging and we're going to get you access to it as well, and all the other maintainers, because they do struggle to see the logs because they can't see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I have a show called Clustered on my channel, which is where people break Kubernetes clusters and we fix them live, and we use Teleport and GitHub handles to give people access to all the clusters in a secure way. So it's really cool.
Really? Oh my God, that sounds like such a great way to do it as well. And that series sounds awesome too. I need to get your YouTube channel up actually and share it. I've been sharing your Twitter, but let's get your
Rockwood.live is the fastest way to.
Okay. Was it there? Did I see it? Was there a link?
There is a link, I think. Oh no, there's not. Sorry. Just Rockwood. That's my.
Can I get it off dev?
No, Rockwood.live. I'm afraid. I'm rebuilding all of my web properties.
What you need is a link-free one, which is an open source project, and then you get your own link, and then you can put all your links below with a bit of timeline if you want as well. See. And to get some green squares for doing it as well. It's just a JSON file. Okay, so YouTube.
Just type rockcode.live as a URL and it'll go straight to it.
I see.
Yeah.
Rockcode.live.
Yes, that'll take you straight to my YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Let me share that in the chat as well. I need to bookmark some more of your teleport videos and your other ones as well. Okay, I'll leave that open just because I want to share it again. Okay, everyone also subscribe to David's channel as well. Lots of great content on that. Sounds awesome. Okay, yeah, we can destroy it and bring it back up. Yeah, it's the beauty of infrastructure as code. Datadog for central logging. We'll have a discussion about that next time. I don't want to get too sidetracked. on
Yeah,
that one?
my preferred route for centralized logging is like you could run this stuff on your cluster, but honestly, Grafana Cloud free tier is really awesome. I was almost
Oh,
going to swear there. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but
no, no
um,
swearing.
Grafana Cloud is really awesome, and you get 50 gig of logs for free with 2 week retention.
Okay, that's pretty good. Interesting.
And
Okay.
you can just deploy Promtail to the cluster, or you could use FluentD, Vector, Telegraph. Any of these tools will all write to Loki on Grafana Cloud.
And then to add that, just not to go into too much detail now, but would it again be an update to our Pulumi config to just get that to work?
Yeah, so we would use Pulumi to write a secret to our Kubernetes cluster, which contains our access token or write token for Grafana Cloud. And then we would deploy Promtail. That's the Grafana approach. So we deploy Promtail to the cluster with that token. It would scrape. It runs as a daemon set, gets all the logs off of all the nodes and puts them to Grafana. And the great thing about Grafana is it works with everything. So like you can start with your logs being centralized, then you do your metrics, then you can do events and traces. You can just start to layer on all of this data. I even have my Grafana hooked up to BigQuery to pull in my YouTube analytics. Like you can do so much.
Wow. And you gave me an idea that I need also another one added to the list if anyone needs a green square with an issue on the infrastructure repo to figure out how to manage our Kubernetes secrets, because we do have about 6 or 7 secrets that we will need to be there as well.
So Pulumi does secrets management, just for the record.
Perfect. So that's something we'll have to look at another time as well. I think we're going to need some more parts. So yeah, that would be good.
All right. So are we deploying? Are we doing Contour or are we doing Ambassador?
We'll go with your recommendation. I saw some people said Nginx, but let's go with whatever you think is best. You're the expert.
All righty. I mean, we can go with Nginx. I just the Ambassador and Contour projects are CNCF projects, so they're governed independently, which I think is good. I always try to go down that path whenever possible. So I'm going to share you the link.
And another great question from Carl. Will we have to update our code to centralize the logging as well? That's an interesting question.
No.
Yes.
As long as you're logging to standard out, we are good.
Amazing. So yeah, teleport is to give us the access. So I could give you access to the logs via teleport, and it could be read write, it could be read, and all those sorts of things, which just looked amazing. And if you can sync it with GitHub as well, that's just super cool.
All right, so you want to pop that up and show it to people. So this is the Ambassador stack, which makes Nginx stuff nice and simple.
Let's bring this up. Okay.
So you can see from the installation instructions, we also have to handle a Helm chart. So we're going to have to deal with that. Okay. We have to create a namespace. We have to deploy the CRDs, and we should be there. Yeah. Pull up this. Oh, I think that was the proprietary docs I pulled, but they're pretty much the same these days. The open source one is called Emissary, but I believe you can actually use either. Okay, so let's get this deployed. And I'm just going to do this with straight YAML. So I'm going to copy the commands from the docs into VS Code so you can see what I'm working through.
Okay, sounds good.
So these are the commands I got from the documentation. So the first thing we need is a namespace. So we will call this emissary namespace, which is the new Kubernetes core v1 namespace, which we call emissary. And actually, there's nothing to configure on a namespace, so we should be all right with just that. Another thing we can do, because this is just TypeScript, like we can start. This doesn't all have to live in index.ts.
I was going to ask you that. Actually, it says, can we start abstracting things out and moving things around?
Yes, let's do it.
It gives us reuse as well, right? Later on, if we want, multiple things, we can reuse them. But we can do that later. I wouldn't worry too much about it for now. Do it all in one file for now if it's easier.
No, I think you're still following me anyway, right?
Yeah, still following you.
So we just create an Nginx controller here. Redo my imports as Kubernetes from Kubernetes, like so. And then we're just going to work through our thing. So we've got our namespace. So done, delete. Next, we have to deploy the CRDs. So we can say emissary CRDs is new Kubernetes. And this is a YAML.config file. And this just takes, let's call this emissary CRDs. And this just takes some YAML, and it works with remote resources. So I'm not actually going to do anything particularly special here. I'm just going to say that's the URL, and that will work. Now we have a dependency here, which we need to ensure. Well, it's going to deploy it to. So we're in an interesting situation here. I'm trying to work out how much details to go into. So let's take a look at these first, because I'm curious if they specify a namespace. And grep for namespace. Okay, yes, they do. So we're probably okay, but we need to make sure that matches. So we're going to have an emissary system. Now, it's okay if they don't match. What you actually need to do when they don't is apply a transformation, which Pulumi supports. You can do transformations, and then this takes like an anonymous function where you pass in all of the objects within the file, and we could set the namespace. The syntax I never remember. I always look it up, so I'm really glad that I don't need to do it. But we still need our dependency on the namespace. We need it to exist first, so we can just say depends on emissary namespace, like so. Next, done. We need to apply. Oh, this is. I'm confused. Let me check the command. Okay. This does want to be an emissary. So the docs, I know you can't see them right now, but it says create a namespace called emissary, deploy the CRDs, which CRDs we don't need to worry about too much right now. And then we create another namespace, which is this other resource here, which I'm assuming potentially has the emissary system in it. Let's just grep. Yeah, okay. So we've got two resources to provide. So we're going to copy this, and we'll call this emissary NS, just because that's what they call it in their URL, and I don't like to deviate too much. We'll drop this in. And I don't think there's any hard dependencies here, but I'm just going to change this to a list and depend on everything that's coming before it in the file for now. So Pulumi doesn't execute top to bottom. It builds a directed graph.
Got you.
And we'll deploy everything at the same time if there are no dependencies. Now, we didn't have to declare any dependencies in the previous example because all of our dependencies already existed in code. So we create the cluster. The kube config has a dependency on it because the resource references the cluster. So Pulumi inferred a dependency. And then we have our provider. And because these two resources use the provider as a resource option, that dependency was mapped automatically too. But because these resources don't reference each other, we have to be more explicit about the dependency.
Got you.
Last step. In fact, this isn't even a deployment step. This is waiting for it to be healthy. So we can just remove that completely. Now, I don't like files that just output random things. So what we're going to do is create deploy Nginx controller, which is a function like so, and we'll export this. And then inside of our index.ts, down here, we can say import from Nginx controller. And we have a function called deploy, where we can just say, hey, go deploy my Nginx controller. What I like about this approach is I can now swap out my Nginx controller whenever I want, and my main code doesn't really care. So if I did decide to deploy Nginx, or I did decide to switch to Contour, I just go update that one file and everything else will just work.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to run a preview, and we should see a lot more here because emissary deployment does contain, we've got something that's duplicated. This error message is telling us that we have a duplicate URN, which means I copied an ID that was being naughty. So when these are duplicated, Pulumi gets a little bit confused and says you can't do that. So we just remove it. Yeah, that's a lot of resources. So what Pulumi is doing is downloading that YAML, processing it, parsing it, and saying, okay, you're actually, when you deploy this config file, you're deploying 2 cluster roles, a whole bunch of cluster role bindings, a service account, more cluster roles, a service, a deployment, etc., etc., etc. Are we happy with that deploy? I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, do it, and then we'll answer some of the questions in the chat. Some people have joined towards the end of the stream, so I think they've missed the beginning part, but I'll explain a bit more in a second.
Yeah, sorry. I know I'm going really fast here. I hope I'm making sense though.
No, it's good. I think I'll have to run through this and watch this live stream again myself and have a play as well. But it's yeah. So Shivyam, we're rebuilding the EddieHub cluster as infrastructure as code, and we're using Pulumi to do it. I'll be pushing this up to GitHub shortly on the infrastructure repo on EddieHub. And you can see 41 minutes ago, we created this Kubernetes cluster. But at the moment, we haven't got to the database side. I threw a bit of a spanner in the mix. So we actually are doing the rebuild itself, going straight for the database and building on the previous load balancer that I created by kind of clicking and pointing with DigitalOcean. I wanted to move away from that. So I said, let's build it as infrastructure as code so everyone can follow along. Even if you miss the live stream, when we do a part 2, people can kind of see what happened with code, which you can see up here in the screen above on the left, sorry. So yes, this is the list of things that we need to do. We built it today, and hopefully people have raised issues for this, and I can close this shortly. And we are doing. We didn't put load balancer in here. Let's just edit one here.
Well, I think you're going to have 3 load balancers at the moment. If you want to confirm that as well, but
Okay.
we're going to delete one.
Lumi. Okay, so even if they're done, let's create issues for them, check if they don't exist already, and then we can tick those off the list. Let's have a look.
No, we still only have 2. All right, so let's take a look at what is inside of our cluster just now.
Take a refresh. Okay.
So if we take a look at our services in the emissary, we've got nothing. So let's take a look at emissary system. And we have a cluster IP service. So we probably need to tweak the deployment to tell it to make that a load balancer service. But it's not a big deal for the moment. Okay. So what's our next step?
Is that question to me?
Yeah. What were we doing again?
I have actually forgotten. We did the cluster, we did the load balancer, then we look at the list. What we're doing next. Now I'm conscious of time. What were we doing, everyone? Does anyone remember? Were you all paying attention? I do see some people having some conversations in the chat. Yeah, we're not going to get time to go to the databases today, but we'll get that onto that part 2. Did I make a note of it? We built the cluster. We've done. Oh yes, was it the load balancer? Yes. So rather than having a load balancer for each service, we were going to for each deployment, we were going to do it so we used Ambassador. So therefore, we had one load balancer, and then Ambassador took care of it. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay. Right. Okay. We need to make a little bit of a change here, but I'm happy to do that, and it'll take me less than 5 minutes. So.
Okay.
We're still going to deploy the namespace and the CRDs, but this deploy for, did we even deploy? Yeah, we did deploy it. This deploy doesn't allow us to modify or configure the ambassador. And we don't want it to deploy with a cluster IP service. We want a load balancer service. So we're going to have to switch to the Helm chart, which I'll drop the link here. So on the Artifact Hub, you can find loads of Helm charts. There is an emissary one here. Helm charts allow us to pass in a bit more configuration into what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is the const emissary deploy equals new Kubernetes Helm v3 release emissary, and this takes a whole bunch of stuff so we can have our chart. Can't remember how the charts are provided. Do we need the repository? No, we might be all right. And our chart is, I'm just getting this from the hub, emissary ingress. Pretty sure we do provide this via repository ops. So. Repo, there we go. Cool. From here, we can specify the values. which is what we want to pass to the chart to configure it. And if you want to just click on that link, oh, I didn't send it to you, did I?
This one, app.
No, the Artifact Hub one. You'll just see the options I'm looking at. So what we're looking for is load balancer, which is configured via the service.type. So if you search for load balancer on that page.
One.
Next one.
Only one. Oh, I did two words.
Single word. Single word.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there we go at the top. Service.type, second line from the top. So we want to modify this. We want to say, hey, we actually want a load balancer service. So we get a public IP address, and then we can do internal routing to our thing.
Got you.
I think what I had there might be enough. So I'm going to run a preliminary preview to see what it says. It should delete our previous emissary deploy, and it will do the Helm release, assuming I haven't missed anything. Which looks all right to me. So let's run a preliminary up. And go.
So did you say you think it will delete this one and create a new one?
No, that's our Nginx load balancer. So we have to remove that from index.ts. What I would expect with our Helm chart deploy. Oh, I haven't added the provider to any of these resources.
If you're doing it live, it's going to go wrong. So if it hasn't got a provider, what it'll do? It'll create a new one. Okay, I see.
If it doesn't have a provider, it's using whatever your kubeconfig is on your machine. So it's probably deploying to the EddieHub first cluster. But when I add the provider, it's then removing them, so you'll never notice it.
Okay.
But what we do see is the load balancer is being provisioned. So the Helm deploy is working. So I'm going to modify our deploy Nginx and deploy Nginx controller to take our provider as an argument. And then we're just going to use that syntax like so. That's our namespace ops and then the resource ops. Here we can do provider. So this is something that happens a lot when you're working with multiple non-default providers. We actually accept config in the pulumi.yaml to disable all default providers like this, because this behavior can get really frustrating. I just didn't do that at the start. Now we need to update index.ts, and we're going to pass in our Kubernetes provider like so. So we'll let that finish. We'll run Pulumi up again. And then we'll add one mapping to our Nginx service, and we should be done. So let's do the mapping just now and assume that this will run okay in the background.
Okay.
So what we've deployed is emissary ingress with a load balancer service, which means when we hit that IP address, something will get to our cluster. The next step is then to tell emissary how to route those requests based on DNS names or paths to services within the cluster, including a default service. So we need to come to emissary. I'm just going back to their docs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And we have an example here, which I'll paste into the terminal so you can see it before I do the actual deploy. So this is it. So we need to replicate this into Pulumi. Now, Pulumi has a tool called CRD to Pulumi, which can actually generate rich typed SDKs. But we're not going to do that today because we are extremely short on time. So I'm just going to do this the manual way. So we're going to deploy our Nginx mapping, which is now a new Kubernetes. And we want a core v1 Kubernetes. Oh, come on. Oh, API extensions. v1 custom resource definition. I can't remember how to do custom resources. I'm going to Google it. Hold on.
Yeah, Google it, of course. Don't worry.
So,
how's everyone doing in the chat? You following along? You see David spending my money on DigitalOcean? Look at all these load balancers we got. They're like £10, $10 a month.
All right, we're back in business. We've got a spec. All right, so when there's no type for what you want to deploy, Kubernetes has a lot of custom resources. We use API extensions, custom resource. I was close. I put v1, but you don't need the v1.
Okay.
We have this object. Now, previously, Pulumi's entered API version and kind for us automatically. With custom resources, we do that. So we drop this in. We drop the mapping in. We drop in our metadata. So it's name, Nginx. Namespace, I'm going to keep default. It's not important. Host name, we're going to do star. So we're going to map all requests. We don't need a prefix. And then the service is going to be our service from up here. And we need the name. So we do nginx service.metadata.name. And that should be it. And we'll now deploy, or we will be deploying, an emissary mapping configuration to our cluster. Unfortunately, our Helm deploy hasn't quite finished. So we'll give that another 30 seconds. And then we have to deploy it again, but maybe we can take some questions and hopefully see the result at the end. Are you okay to go to half past? Is that all right?
I'm good as long as your time's fine. I've got another call. My call's off another 3:30, so I've got another hour. So I'm fine.
All right, I better get my seat out there and get comfy.
I'm conscious of your time. I appreciate you doing this last minute as well. And we do have a part 2 planned, everyone. But this is awesome.
Doing this stuff. I just love doing Kubernetes, and if I get to use Pulumi at the same time, I'm even happier because I just think like I treat this as code now. I can refactor the functions, I can write tests, I can do everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You said you could write tests. That's obviously another conversation to have. That's really, really interesting. I was just finished. I love it how we can see the whole infrastructure here and people can make improvements. Like you said, async, you could make something, between part 1 and part 2, you might make some tweaks to this. And I love that idea. It's just such a good thing. How's everyone? You still following along? What are you thinking? Infrastructure as code is for you or not for you? Let us know in the chat.
Okay, so what I did there before I ran Pulumi up again is remove the load balancer type from our Nginx service. So that's now going to be cluster IP. DigitalOcean will remove that load balancer, remove the old Helm deploy, remove that load balancer, spin up a new load balancer with our new emissary, and that is us done. Hopefully that's the last thing I need to type.
No worries. So we got some questions. Let's have a look. There was a question earlier up that I missed. Where was I? Probably missed it. If I missed your question further up, please write it again in the chat. But the question just got now: does Pulumi support constructs? I don't know what that means.
So there's another infrastructure as code project called Sdk, and they have Sdk, which is their. That was a very fast replace, by the way. That
was very fast. So that just happened now, and then it removed the other 2 load balancers.
Yeah, we're going to have to check that that's done what we want, but I'll answer the question first.
Okay, yeah.
So yes, Pulumi has interrupt with Terraform, so you could bridge Terraform providers, and with constructs from Sdk, so you can use Sdk constructs within your Pulumi programs. We have articles and documentation on it. I'm not going to ad hoc a demo of that right now, but yes, we do support constructs.
Carl, don't worry, it's not touching our production environment. We're creating a whole new environment. So our load balancer from a year ago is not being touched. This is the one we just created now, is one we're playing with. And that load balancer is going to a new Kubernetes cluster, which we've called production here. And this is the one we did a year ago. So don't worry, Link3 and all the other projects and APIs should all be up and running and working. They're not luckily not being touched. I want to try and migrate all of the apps over to this new one, not now, but once we've got the logging in place, SSL in place, database in place, then I can migrate everything over, I think, to this infrastructure as code, and we can just continue making improvements on it. So yeah, don't worry, we're not busting any of our stuff yet.
So that was fast because it failed. The problem was these TRDs already exist in a cluster. Now, the way around that would be to do replace. No, there's a delete option. Create. What's it called? There's an option to delete a resource before you recreate it, but I don't remember the flag. So all I did was comment it out. They've now been deleted, and then I'm going to comment this back in. It just means that because you can't create Pulumi doesn't let you create custom resources when they already exist on the cluster. So I just skipped around that.
Yeah, and the that load balance that came up very fast has come down very fast as well. So hopefully it'll get fixed.
That is our Nginx one, which is now being removed. So what we're going to see is our new emissary one spin up, and that'll be your last load balancer.
Okay.
Yeah, I say things with confidence, but inside I'm like, I have no idea.
That's all part of the fun, but at least it's repeatable, right? If we run it all again, we'll get the same result. If wrong or right, it's repeatable, and then we can make improvements. So Carl always has awesome questions as well. So what's the best practices to handle persistent data inside a cluster? That's going to be in part 2. It was meant to be for this one, but I threw a spanner in the works this morning. What we're going to do is we're going to attach a volume to the Kubernetes cluster. So if we rebuild the cluster, the attached SSD will never kind of get wiped, and we can reattach that to the new cluster. So therefore, we can run databases in our cluster rather than having external services, which is what we have at the moment. So if I go to databases, we actually do have Mongo database, and it's costing me about $15 a month. But if I wanted to add MySQL or Postgres or whatever, which we do want a MySQL one for something else, then it's going to add $15 each time. So we want to add it to the Kubernetes, but it doesn't persist. So to get it to persist, we will add not spaces. Spaces is like S3. We have volumes, so we'll be able to add a volume to that, which is I think like $5 a month for like 50 gigs or something, which is pretty awesome, and it's persisted. So that's how we will do that, and then we can add Redis, Mongo, whatever we need, really easily, and we can just store it on that volume, which I think is awesome. Hopefully that answered that question. Cool. Okay. Sorry, what did I miss?
It's telling me that an Nginx class already exists, so I'm going to remove it manually so we can deploy.
Did you spell Nginx? You spell that right?
Yeah. And this is just because I had a bit of a botch deploy, so I am having to clean up after myself.
No worries. It wouldn't be real if it didn't go wrong.
All right. Let's see how far we get this time.
So yes, that's what the infrastructure project is for. Hopefully we've got some issues on this as well created. Let's have a look. Got no issues. No one wants any green squares. I'll do them all afterwards. one for each of these. I can get like the 8 green squares that are there.
All right. Well, what we see now is our Helm release is being created in the cluster. We're going to see that third load balancer start to pop up now.
Okay, awesome. While we're doing that, let me just share your YouTube channel. So remind everyone what sort of content you do. You talked about, you fixed people's Kubernetes cluster. You did the GitHub Actions replacement so you can run it locally, and what's it called, Dagger. There was something else you did that I thought was super awesome. You said you got 10 out. Teleport course. I'm so gonna watch
if you click
that.
on playlists, you'll see there's a teleport course, an InfluxDB course, and I'm currently working on a BGP course. So the teleport one's in the middle at the top, the BGP one's on the left, the InfluxDB one is near the bottom. So yeah, awesome. I'm trying to provide, I have a lot of experience. I worked for Influx for 2 years. I worked at Nginx Metal where I did lots of hardcore networking stuff and bare metal. So I'm trying to share that knowledge with people, and YouTube seems to be the format that I enjoy doing. So
that's awesome. No, that's great. I can't wait to watch those. So everyone, I've shared the link in the chat. Don't forget to go subscribe to David's channel. And I'm going to be binge watching that this week.
Yeah, the teleport course. There's a lot there. Teleport is a fantastic tool. So definitely, especially for you, like you've got a community cluster, you want to be able to give people access in a secure fashion. Like, absolute no brainer. Like, here, just give me your GitHub handle, and you've got access to this node or this pod or this namespace. Done.
I love that. That's so good. And if someone said, "Hey, look, I want to try something on the server," I can just spin up a drop alert, give them access to it, and then I can just, we can just destroy it a couple of days later or whatever, or keep it if it's something they want to manage. There's just so many things we can do. I love that. It's just that's so awesome. I'm surprised I didn't know about it before. So great to hear that.
Yeah, I'm just a small channel, but I'm trying my best to get the work out there. I'm a terrible marketer. I'm good with the tech, dreadful at everything else.
We'll do some more collabs and we'll do some more Twitter Spaces as well. Twitter Spaces is a great way to. So you're almost at 10,000. We'll get you to 10,000 in the next 2 months, easy. Twitter Spaces is definitely the way to do it.
I have a Twitter space in 30 minutes with Canal, actually.
Oh, awesome! What's the topic?
Infrastructure as code with Pulumi.
Oh,
so I
awesome!
go straight out of this and straight into the next one, which I think is why we had difficulty trying to organize this stuff, because I was a bit worried about overloading my day, but I'm having so much fun. This was totally awesome.
Cool, thank you. Wow, okay, make sure you get a bit of a break before that Twitter space, and I have a call, but at 3:30, I'm trying to listen in a bit of that space before I get on that call. Let me just share your Twitter link so people can join the Twitter space, because it's continuing on from this live stream in terms of infrastructure as code. Sounds so. Okay, so that came up. I guess it's waiting for the checks to come through. What else do we have in the chat? Let's have a look. Did I miss anything in the chat? I run all my projects on Kubernetes now, so I'm quite keen to get this cluster like bulletproof. I'm going to run like everything on it. I've got some family projects like for in-laws and stuff, which are like WordPress. I'm just going to containerize those WordPress. That's what I need the MySQL for. And I'm going to deploy them to the cluster. They're on their own domains. I'm going to manage that. So Flux or Argo, I haven't. No, Argo is like CD. So is that like is that going to be like GitHub Actions?
So Argo CD and Flux are GitOps operators that run inside of your cluster and do automatic deploys of your infrastructure whenever your Git repository changes. They're both great tools. Pulumi does the same. We have the Pulumi Kubernetes operator, so you can just point it to a repository and say, whenever this changes, run it inside my cluster and update it. So use whatever one you're happy with, or everyone your company's happy with. They're all great tools.
I think I'll stick with the GitHub action. It just pushes to it when it's ready. I kind of like that flow. Is there any disadvantage to that?
Well, I mean, that's a long topic that I'm not going to be able to cover. GitHub Actions run whenever you modify your code, but then we have this concept of infrastructure drift. Someone could in the background go and click something in the DigitalOcean backend and delete or change things, and you want to be able to reconcile that drift as quickly as possible. Okay. Which is why it can be good to bring that stuff into a control loop within Kubernetes. But we can talk about that another day.
Yep. That sounds good.
All right. We can let's see.
Oh, it's ticking off some things.
Hopefully it's just about to finish. Because we do have the load balancer. Do you want to pop open a new shared terminal? We can probably run kube control commands without waiting for Pulumi, because I suspect the things we need already exist.
Do I need to add this live share?
Yeah, you have to make it writable to me.
Make writable.
It's now finished anyway, so we can pop back over to the other one.
Okay, so let me ditch that second one. Give us a bit more real estate. Oh, yeah, there we go.
All right, so now we have what we want inside of our cluster, and we can run curl hp, and we are hitting the cluster, so now we can run kube control get mapping, and it says everything should be going to the service. That curl should have really worked.
But we've got nothing on the Kubernetes cluster. Does that? Oh, we should get Nginx, I guess, reply back.
Yeah, it looks all right. Let me try the other. Maybe it just. I don't know why we had two load balancers here actually, and why am I doing HTTPS? Okay, we'll probably need to pick this up on the next time. But we do have emissary deployed with hopefully one load balancer. That's what it looks like on the DigitalOcean side. The requests are getting there. We do have a mapping which should be routing all traffic to this, because we have source and the prefix of blank and star.
Oh, that load balancer came down. Is that an issue?
That is the issue.
I need to refresh the page. We can debug that next time. I know you're short on time.
Yeah, I don't know why that's down. And we have two still, right? I thought down meant it was deleting it, but apparently down means it's not passing
I wonder if I can get any logs from it or not. Have you got no?
Sorry, I probably confused the hell out of this by spinning up too many things at the same time. So we can run a Pulumi destroy just now and spin this back up next time, or we could leave it as is. It's up to you.
Yeah, do a destroy, and then let's spin it up next time, and then we can talk people through it when we do it next time as well.
All right, so we have one protected resource, so we don't want to delete your EddieHub. So
no, please don't.
We won't. So what we can do is retain on delete true, remove protected, and we need to do a Pulumi up just to refresh the state with those new options.
Got you. Okay.
And then we can do the Pulumi destroy, and we'll be good. We can check what it's going to delete. I think it's deleting our provider, but that's all right. Like so. Yeah, I completely broke this emissary thing, haven't I?
Whoever said Nginx in the chat, probably a good call.
Well, no, I mean, I think I would have broken Nginx too with like 4 deploys in 30 seconds and a whole bunch of metadata being thrown around willy-nilly. But I'll tidy this up in a minute.
No worries. I can delete these. I can delete these manually as well. It's not an issue. I know you're going to go to your next Twitter space. Yeah. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Let me share David's YouTube channel as well in the chat. Links in the description below. Don't forget, if you want to go to an awesome conference as well, we have Kube Huddle in October in Scotland, in Edinburgh as well, which so many awesome people are going. I see from socials. So go and geek out and join them too. And I'm sharing David's Twitter again in the chat. Everyone, thank you so much for supporting and helping as we go along. Really, really appreciate it. And people are going to join the Twitter space. You should be able to find it on David's Twitter and Kunal's Twitter. So I will join for a bit as well. So that's in 23 minutes. Is that correct, David?
It is indeed, yes.
Perfect. So thank you all so much for joining. And we're going to, these things to do it in an hour and a half is quite hard, especially when you're managing chat and questions, which I love the questions, by the way. But, we'll push this up, and so you'll be able to see it, and any improvements you can make, do make. Don't forget that on this issue, we want to close this and make an issue for every single item here on the infrastructure repo. So if you want some green squares, then you'll feel free to do those. So here we go. Nothing's been added yet. I'll give that a refresh. Have any been added yet? No one wants any green squares. That is usually how people biting my hand off for green squares. People are too engrossed in what was going on today. So thank you all. And thanks, David, for your amazing help. David, if you stay on for 30 more seconds, I'll just bring up the holding page, and I can just thank you personally afterwards. If you've got time, if you need to go, just do drop off.
All right. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in part 2 next Friday. If I remember correctly, I will create it on my channel shortly so you can set a reminder. Thanks, everyone. Bye.